Welcome to IJ4EU Confidential, where we go behind the scenes of groundbreaking investigative journalism. I'm Timothy Large from the International Press Institute in Vienna, and we're delighted to have a live audience as we discuss yet another investigation supported by our IJ4EU Fund for Cross-Border Watchdog Reporting. So thank you very much for joining today. We hope you'll take part. Please do type your questions in the chat, and we promise to get to them in real time. Now, I should warn you, today's subject is a sobering one. We're discussing a project called the Border Graves Investigation. It's had a lot of attention. In June, it won the special award of the European Press Prize, and last month it was one of 3 investigations to win the IJ4EU Impact Award. It's also generated an awful lot of press coverage. When we think of people buried in unmarked graves, we probably think of war or maybe natural disasters. We don't generally think of migration and asylum. But this investigation uncovered more than 1,000 unmarked graves of people who died on migration routes to the European Union. Just take a moment to absorb that. More than 1,000 migrants and refugees put into the ground before they could be identified, without a proper burial, no closure for their loved ones. And these graves are probably the tip of the iceberg. Almost 30,000 people are estimated to have died trying to reach the EU during the past decade, and the majority are still missing. 8 journalists, mostly freelancers, went above and beyond to identify these unmarked graves. And we're going to hear about the extraordinary lengths they went to and the heartbreaking stories they uncovered. We'll also hear how they exposed a systemic failure in identifying and dignifying the deceased. So I'm very glad to be able to welcome the 3 of the journalists who took part on this project. Oh, well, maybe it's 2. We're hoping to have 3. We have certainly Gabriela Ramirez and Daphne Tolis, who join us now. And we're hoping also to be joined by Tina Zhu, who's in New York, and we hope she'll join us during the program. So welcome to both of you. Rather than me introducing you myself, perhaps you could just give us a little flavor of who you are and what you do. Gabriela, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you for that introduction, Timothy, and for the introduction to the project. My name is Gabriela Ramirez. I am an investigative journalist. I'm a journalist from Venezuela. I moved to Europe 3 years ago, and now I work as a part-time freelancer and part-time as a multimedia and data editor with Unbiased News. That is a newsroom, a feminist cross-border newsroom based in Germany. Yeah.
It's great to have you on today's episode. Thank you so much for joining. And Daphne, you join us from the field. We can see you're on your mobile camera there. Where are you now?
Hi, I'm in Greece, outside of Athens at the moment, filming a different project. So I had to join from the move. I'm based in Greece. I'm a freelance producer, journalist, and documentary filmmaker. Have been covering the issue of migration in Europe, mostly in Greece, but also in other parts of Europe. And also as far as Bangladesh, the Rohingya refugee crisis since 2015, where the so-called European refugee crisis began.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And as I said, we hope that Tina Zhu will also join us. She led the project. She's a freelance multimedia journalist. Okay, I thought we could just kick off with a little, very short video to set the scene. This is the trailer from the project. So let's just play this video now to give a flavor.
The mother dream every night about this boy. He explained he don't want to stay in this cemetery. We want to visit my cousin and have the name on the stone.
تذبح بتجرح بس بنفس الوقت شوف إذا بجوز إذا كان له مكان ودفنته بقول خلص بناته 10 سنوات وكل سنة بقولوا لي وين بابا وين دفن وين كذا ما عندي جواب أقول لبناته ما بعرف الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله.
Frem, Soliana, Suleiman, Tabib, Tayyedi, Blitz, Gabriela, Pikli, Maria.
It's hard to watch that. It's very powerful. Who searches for them, who identifies them, who buries them, who remembers them? I suppose those are rhetorical questions in a way, but your investigation did go a long way to answer those questions. Let's start at the beginning. I wanted to ask you what initially motivated you to undertake this investigation, and how did your team of 8 journalists come together? 8 journalists in different countries. What was the genesis of this project? Gabriela?
So I have to say that it was Tina's baby project. She had she had read about some reports in China. So she's a Chinese American journalist, and she had read about some reports in China. And I think I was the first one who she shared with about that, who is part of the project. So she shared with me some reports she had read about the same problem with unidentified death of migrants. And I also mentioned to her that, like as I mentioned, I'm from Venezuela, and at the same time there was happening this migration from Venezuela, mainly Venezuelans migrants, through the direct gap, which is a gap between Panama and Colombia, to go to the US. So just recently, yesterday, I read a report there have been 1,000 people missing in this gap. And I have a personal cousin who crossed this border, and he survived. He made it to the US in a way, but he mentioned to me that while crossing this border, he could smell the bodies, that no one is picking them up, and kids who miss their parents, and really horrible images. And then I also told Tina, wow, this would be so powerful to do it. And Tina really wanted to do this project, and then we decided she brought the team together to make this border grace investigation. And I think it was just really conversations that we were having, and then deciding which countries to include. Of course, the Mediterranean has a huge number of deaths every year because of people coming through by sea. And I have been reported before for the last 3 years in the Belarusian border, Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. And we wanted to find if that was something happening in these areas too. And yeah, I think that was kind of the beginning of the project. And then we started to assemble the team. We wanted to collaborate, to work with mainly local journalists. And yeah, I think that's how the team was brought together. And then we collaborated with 7 other journalists in Croatia, Serbia, Poland, Lithuania, Greece, Italy, Spain, and that's it. Yeah.
France as well, maybe. Yeah. So let's talk about how you did it. How did you carry out this investigation? How did you identify these unmarked graves all over the place in 8 different countries, all along the fringes of the EU, some very remote, hillsides, forests, all of them, I think, were in cemeteries, if I'm not mistaken, very far-flung places. You often didn't have very complete data to go on. Talk us through how you actually did this remarkable work of documenting, verifying, tracking down these unmarked graves.
Yeah, so it was a huge thing to do when we didn't have any data. We knew that it was happening, and there has been, the IOM says that there have been 50,000 deaths, over 50,000 deaths since 2014, and almost 60% of these deaths are unidentified. So we basically did a lot of on-the-ground reporting. we just didn't know where to collect the data, so we had to create the data, right? And in each of these countries, local journalists traveled to cemeteries in the borders, in really remote places. In Spain, they would be in the islands, for example. In Greece, the same. And just really walking and seeing who we will find in the cemeteries who could talk to us about the people who were being buried there. So we talked to cemetery keepers, the local governments, local authorities, border guards. In my case, for example, one of the stories I covered, it was a migrant who came with his brother, and so his brother and him separated because his brother was very sick, and then he wanted to seek for help outside after like 8 days in the forest in Poland, and they part apart, and they never found each other again because one of the brothers was pushed back to Belarus, and in the meantime his brother died, and this person had his passports on his backpack, but no one checked or no one was interested in identifying this person, and this person ended up in a unmarked grave. That months later, thanks to the work of local activists, like really comparing, when this person died, when this brother, because the brother reached out to the local activists in Poland, and they found out it was the same person, right? So in my case, while I was covering this, I went to this cemetery, and I just found a couple, local old lady and old man, like under 70s, 80 years old, who were bringing flowers and cleaning the grave. And they are just locals. They just live 10 minutes walk from this place. And they are the people who are doing this. So yeah, when you ask how we did it, it was a lot of underground reporting, and we also collaborated with NGOs who are the main ones collecting some data on especially missing people, and then compare this data and then visit the places or visiting the places that they have collected, or talking to anyone who could give us some signs.
Gabriela, just give us the bigger picture in a way. 1,000 unmarked graves is obviously, it sounds terrible. It is terrible. It's probably just the tip of the iceberg, as I said. What is the failure that this actually testifies to? Why are so many people on the European migration routes ending up in these unmarked graves without any closure for their families? Why is this happening?
I think while we we work on a cross-border project, so we were like really sharing what were the challenges in one country, what were the challenges in others, and how that was comparable. And we all got to the conclusion that it's for sure very difficult to identify someone who died in these conditions. Yeah, like we are talking about people who naufragate, people who die at sea, which is most of them are lost forever, like they are not found, right? Their bodies are not found. In the forest, it really depends on the season. In summer, like the remains of someone can go lost in 2-3 days. The animals come and eat the body, and I'm sorry that it's too graphic, but that's how. That's like just to get a little bit of understanding of the forensics of how challenging it can be to really identify a body. And this is difficult when the body is found in early stages. But in most of the cases, no one is looking for these bodies, right? So people are, like, as I said, like they are, they go missing in the forest, and there is no, we also found that the police, for example, doesn't say that they are responsible for collecting bodies of migrants. Border guards say they are not responsible. So like there is a kind of a loophole where no one is responsible of doing this. And in most of the countries we covered, it has been the NGOs, local activists, grassroots, really a small, a handful of people doing what they can, right? And I will talk more about Poland because this is the Poland, Lithuania, the Belarusian border. This is where I covered. But this crisis started in 2021, and I think it kind of tells the story of how since 2021, the activists started to collect bodies and really do the search in the forest in 2022. And, like the police didn't do anything. So how can you explain that normal, extraordinary people, ordinary people are doing this work without resources, and the authorities, they have resources and also knowledge, are not doing anything? So in the case of Poland, the police was not collecting bodies, and then the local activists will call the police. There is a body here. You have to go, and then the police said, that's not our responsibility. And then this person will go and find the body, and then after they found the body, they actually say, they take pictures of the body, and then they send it to the authorities again. And then when the authorities see this, is when they go and collect the body, but otherwise that wouldn't have happened. And I think so. Why this is happening is, and what are the failures, is that really, despite the EU passing a law in 2021 asking for general approach, effective approach to identify the migrants, this has not been carried out in most countries. And I think in the case of Greece and Spain, which are countries that have been dealing with this problem for many, many years, there have been some like, there are more organizations, so this is more recognized in the news reports, but still it's the same issue, and I think those are the main things I can think of. Is really a systemic failure of the lack of interest, and it's a political crisis.
It's hard to imagine the same thing happening for people with different, shall we say, migration status, right? If they weren't refugees, migrants, chances are there would be public outcry if people were being flung into unmarked graves when they die. Apologies for the barking dog. Hopefully we have Daphne back now. Let's try again, Daphne.
Let me quickly give you an overview of the situation in Greece and what I personally faced here, or what I covered and what I saw, and give you a bit of the backstage, things that were not necessarily in the report, but it's like a distillation, let's say, of my reporting since 2015. So what happened here is we had this the onset of the European refugee crisis in 2015, where thousands of people were crossing onto the Greek islands every day by sea. And I mean every day. 2015, August, September, October, November, all these months, well into 2016, up until the European agreement with Turkey was implemented, we've had people arriving in the thousands every day. What happened is obviously that not everyone made it alive. And by that, I mean that there were shipwrecks happening in the sea because the seas were rough. The people were on dinghies, on rubber boats, not made to carry the amount of people they were carrying. Many people were not wearing a life jacket, and even if they were, some of these life jackets back then in 2015 and 16 were not the proper ones, not the ones that would actually buoy you and support you if you fall into the water. It happened so that I was there covering this refugee crisis, and there was a very big shipwreck, the first that Greece has actually experienced as a country, to have people dying, more than 100 people dying, or an unknown people dying at the time. So it was on the island of Lesbos. We were filming, and then we just saw it actually happening. There was a wooden boat. It wasn't a rubber boat. An estimated number of people were 300 on board. How do we know this? We know it because we spoke to the other people that were on board. There is never an accurate way of finding how many people are on board because there is no passenger list. The only person who knows how many people are on these boats is the smuggler, because this is the person who facilitates these journeys by sea. People go on the Turkish shore, they pay some money beforehand, they go on these boats, and then they arrive on the Greek shores. So that shipwreck ended up being the largest at the time. So we had hundreds of people, 300 estimated people were on this shipwreck. And on that day, when all of them fell into the water, there was a massive rescue operation involving the Coast Guard, volunteers, fishermen, Greek fishermen, trying to pluck people out of the water. It was October 2015, just like this day. So I was there. Many volunteers were there, journalists were there. It was very dramatic. We had people literally freezing from hypothermia that they were rescued, and people and babies and women. It was mostly families of Syrians and Afghans at the time. So many of these people who made it alive, we managed to speak to them and get, the understanding of what had happened while this boat broke down. But what also happened is that many people died on this shipwreck because it was this time of the year. It was the end of October. It was quite cold. The sea was choppy. It was between Turkey and Greece. This stretch of sea, and the people that fell into the water stayed into the water for a long time, and as a result, many drowned, and they couldn't be resuscitated. There was not enough time, or they drowned and they died of secondary drowning, meaning that they may have been alive when they arrived on the shore, but then they had swallowed so much water that they died later. And at the time, there was not enough place to bury these people that had died. Because the cemeteries on the island of Lesbos, they accommodate, let's say, the people who die around this island. It's run by the municipalities, and there were already asylum seekers, migrants, refugees buried on these religious Orthodox cemeteries. But the people that died that day had to be buried somewhere else, because there was no space to bury 80, 90, 100 people. We're talking about a large number of people for an island like Lesbos that will not experience something like that unless there's a natural disaster. And I was there at the time, so I remember it being an issue. Where are these people going to be buried was one question. And the other question was, some people were not identified. We didn't know, the authorities didn't know, the coroner didn't know who those people were, because they didn't carry an ID, or the ID was lost in the sea, or there was no one next of kin to say, oh, this was my brother, my mother was traveling with them, and I can't see them. Or if they found the body, then they could identify it. This is what started, let's say, a different approach in Greece. At the time, there were containers brought on the island outside the hospital, 2 large refrigerated containers to store these bodies these unidentified, but also the identified bodies, because it was, again, a large number. This island was not accustomed to having so many people dying in one occasion. And these refrigerated containers would store the bodies in better circumstances, in lower freezing conditions, because you cannot store a body, you cannot have a body in a morgue for a long time. You have to proceed with the DNA sampling, take a sample of the DNA when you don't know who the person is, and then you have to quickly, or as fast as possible, you have to bury, because before decomposition starts. And that's why these containers were brought on this island, to preserve, let's say, these bodies for a longer time, in case relatives came forward, DNA analysis taken from the next of kin, and then a match would be made. And this all took time. And at the same time, the local municipality had to find a way where to bury those people that had drowned in this shipwreck. And they found a plot of land, which a few months later, they managed to open, let's say, the first refugee migrant cemetery on the island of Lesbos. This was the first one to be exclusively burying people that had crossed from Turkey to Greece, asylum seekers, migrants, refugees of both identified and unidentified origin, I say. So, because if you are unidentified, you do not know the religion of the person as well. You you cannot presume that because it's in Greece, he's an Orthodox, or because he's not in Greece, he's a Muslim. You cannot presume that. So this cemetery it's like a civil cemetery. It's not a religious cemetery, as most cemeteries are in Greece, because Greek people are Orthodox, and unless you order for a cremation, you will be normally buried in an Orthodox cemetery. And that's when this cemetery started, where both identified and unidentified bodies are buried there. The first ones being from that shipwreck in end of October 2015, where the coroner took the DNA sample of all of them, sent it to the lab, the central lab, where it's stored there. It is waiting there in case someone comes to identify it, which it happened in the coming months and the coming year. Some people were identified through this process. Others remain unidentified to this date. There's a protocol number and some other numbers written on the gravestone. There's some paperwork involved as well, and everything is in a file, so to say. But there's this cemetery, of course, has grown, because ever since there's been more shipwrecks happening and more deaths on the island of illnesses and other causes.
Let me ask you, what is the toll this takes on the families of the deceased, who obviously don't know what's happened to them, where they're buried, how they were buried?
Well, I mean, the families are the ones that suffer the most on this situation, because from the first day when they are not able to reach the relatives go missing, and they don't have anyone who to contact to find information. So it's as simple as that. Like, there are many barriers. Like there are barriers of language. They are in other countries. They don't have access to internet in some cases. But it's just really how do you tell a mother how to explain her kid that his father has been lost, that his father is lost in a country that she cannot even point out in the map. And in some of the cases we covered, for example, there have been even families that have been broken because of this process of grieving. For example, this one of the wives I talked to, a widow, the mother of her husband, who died in the border with Lithuania. She doesn't talk to her anymore because she cannot accept that her son is dead. She doesn't believe it. She doesn't think that's true until she is able to see the body, right? And they had to recognize the dead body through pictures, right? And well, thus after almost 8 months, they were able to like dealing with all this information, trying to get the information, sending hundreds of emails to different authorities in different countries. And there is something that one of the psychologists called oh gosh, now the word is gone in my head. So like that you are not able to close that cycle. Yeah, when you are not able to bury it, your loved ones, when you are not able to visit his grave, her grave, and bring flowers. Like that's just something that is very human of our society. So that's something that most of these families won't be able to do ever, because even though sometimes they manage to identify them, or they manage to get their name on the graves, they cannot come to Europe to visit the grave, right? And in most of the cases, it's very costly to send their bodies to their home countries. So this is something that we try to really portray in our stories, how, like one man migrating to Europe just leaves behind a family, leaves behind a kid, leaves behind just many other, it has an impact, more than sometimes the migration reporting that we have seen tells or explains, right? Because it's mainly focused on the numbers and the statistics, but the impact on these families are forever. Some of them cannot pass the page. They are stuck. For example, another source we interviewed, her son came from Iraq to Poland, and this woman sits every day on her living room with all the pictures and Facebook posts and prints that she has found on the internet about her son, and she won't be able to do this because to pass the page, because there has not been any other report about that her son is dead, or the body was found, he's just missing for the last 3 years. So they cannot accept that they don't have a body, right? So those are some of the cases we cover regarding the impacts of the families.
Yes, that lack of closure must be absolutely devastating for people.
If I can add, it depends on where the journey started, where the journey ended. For the refugee, the migrant, the asylum seeker that died along this harrowing and very long journey. For example, I was contacted once by someone from Afghanistan saying that a mother was looking for her son. She knew that he left for Europe. That's the only thing she knew. At some point, she lost contact, and she was looking for her son. Where could he be? That means that her son left from Afghanistan, then maybe went to Iran, then maybe went to Turkey, then maybe went to Greece. These are all maybes. She at some point she was in touch with him when she was in Turkey. Okay, he was in Turkey, so that's so far that he knew. But what happened next? Where did he go? Did he arrive to Greece? Did he go somewhere else? Did he try to go to Italy? This means that when they lose contact with their person, their loved one, and they're back in Afghanistan or somewhere very remote, it's very hard to actually first find where this person might be if the person has died. In the end, her son had died from Afghanistan, and she was looking through many cemeteries, through many local authorities, through many NGOs, through coroners in the end, and he was found. He was on the border with Greece, on the land border with Greece, and he had died there. So she had to send DNA from Afghanistan to the central DNA lab in Greece so that there is a match. This was possible at this time, but it's a very rare occasion that it's actually possible to send DNA if you're in a very far-flung place from your next of kin. And it also has to be the mother or the father, maybe the brother or the sister, depending. But sometimes they don't know where to start. Those looking for their loved ones that have gone on this journey and have lost their lives, they don't know where to start looking. And they don't know what to do. They don't know where to send the DNA, how to send. Maybe there's also safety issues, security issues. They're afraid. They don't trust the government. They don't want to go to some organization and ask for help, maybe if they can send the DNA. So there's one part. The other part is, even if someone might have arrived with their child or with their husband, sister, they might have lost them at sea at the same shipwreck, and that body might have been washed away in Turkey. Turkey and Greece being neighboring countries, very close. It doesn't mean that, again, it's very easy that you find the body, and then that the cooperation is always possible between the Greek and the Turkish authorities. So maybe, you have the DNA, you have everything that you need, but you lack the cooperation between those two countries. And a third example, a more, let's say, successful in this closure sense, that last year we had a large fire in Evros, and about a group of people were walking through the forest to avoid the authorities. They had crossed the land border with Turkey, and then a huge fire broke out, and they were charred. They were burned completely. Their bodies were found later, but completely charred. So the coroner in Greece had to find the only way you could find DNA, which is the only thing that you can do. There's nothing else. I mean, if there's no other identifiable characteristic and you're not carrying anything, and even if you were, everything is burned, you have the dental, the teeth, and the bone marrow, and maybe some hair. These are all samples you can take DNA from and then do a match. The family of one of the men managed to identify their loved one through a relative who was in the Netherlands. So he was able to facilitate all the DNA transfer, let's say, and this communication that was needed through the help of the coroner as well. And then they made the identification. And the body, and then he was able to travel because he was in Europe. He was Syrian. He had a travel document. He came to Greece. He arranged all the paperwork, repatriated the body through Turkey back to Syria, where the family was there waiting to bury him.
Yeah, I think that's also important just to mention that one of the obstacles that many families face to identify these people, the relatives, is that they don't get a visa to come here to give DNA. In those cases, there have been cases of bodies that could have been identified, and they just can't, because even though activists or local who work in this area know somehow that these people are connected, they get their visas rejected. So that's also another example of how Europe is failing migrants.
We have a question from Gabby. Gabby, thank you for this. It touches on several things, which I think are very interesting. She says, thanks for such a powerful investigation. I'd like to know more about how you approached your sources and your work reporting about such a difficult topic. Any recommendations to other journalists working on such difficult issues, i.e. how to build trust, etc.? Also, how did you all take care of each other as a team to protect your mental health, being able to keep up? Any specific things that you did that could help other teams? That's a great question.
I will start to say, and really honestly, maybe I'm not the perfect person to speak to for mental health, because I really dove into this subject in 2015, and I'm still covering it for many years after having been through burnout myself. And this, you can't, I don't know what the best way is. You talk to people, take care of yourself, realize, find the signs of what's happening, and then distance yourself. But also it depends on the person. So if you are willing to go into these topics, then I mean, you should know that maybe you do, and you will face at some point some burnout covering these topics. Now, as far as sources is concerned, that's also something that you need to build upon over the years, over your work, over your trust that you build with people, and rapport that you build with people, which again leads to a circle of that you never actually take yourself outside this sphere of harrowing stories and harrowing realities that are happening around you. And some people do shed a light on them, others don't. Some people want to, some people they don't want to hear it. It really depends on the person. I have friends that they don't want to, they can't hear, they don't want to know any of it. Others, they are more open or less affected when they ask me about what I've seen, what I've heard, what I experienced. So I mean, if you want to do this, you have to find the experts every time, talk to people who are there, locals who are dealing with whatever it is that is happening around them. In our case, medical professionals corners are very important, because they're the ones that can, do the actual work of the DNA. And volunteers, if there are any. Refugees themselves connect to people that are in the community of the country that you are reporting. So find the actual people themselves and talk to them. NGOs can assist in that as well. I prefer to try to find the people myself. So I'm not talking through someone. I want to actually find them. So I go on social media, I try to find people and connect with them, explain what I do, show them other work that I've done, and explain what it is that I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and if they are interested in speaking to me, starting from that. And then, of course, you keep this connection open and this conversation going. For many of these people that I've been covering all these years, I'm still in touch with them, even if it's like once every 3 months to say hello, how are you, greetings from Greece.
That's nice.
To Gabi and to anyone, thank you for the question. I think in our case, in our team, we did a couple times some kind of mental health meetings or like checkups in each other. Like we were meeting almost every week, and then a few minutes just before starting the meeting, we would just like discuss, say a few words, how we are doing, how we are feeling. I don't know, there was a body found yesterday. I just heard this news from someone. Just like sometimes just like really sharing that burden of the reporting helps among the team. And that was just one example of something that we did as a Border Graves team. And I think just really take care of yourself. Of course, these investigations, you work mostly with a team, and it's good if you can really build that trust among each other and be able to help each other. But just personally, just take care of yourself, and take some time off the computer, of the fun, of the all these conversations, and that can help. And regarding reporting and building trust with sources, I think for me, maybe it's because I'm also a migrant. I try to cover these stories really as with a human perspective. So just really understand all these people are going through very difficult times, that you don't want to interview and re-interview them and ask them again and again. Like it's really traumatizing for them having to talk to you about this so many times. So just be very mindful of that, and I think that's how you are able to build close connection with your sources. And I think it's also about being respectful, and like sometimes sources will tell you, like, I will tell you this, or I will show you this, but please, I don't want this to be published. And I have heard several cases of journalists who actually published stuff that they were asked not to. And I mean, this is just horrible. And yeah, I think as a journalist is just, please just be respectful and be mindful of the trauma that these people are going through. Yeah.
We have another question from Dinara. She says, amidst the anti-migrant rhetoric becoming more mainstream in Europe, it was touching to hear that some locals care for the unidentified graves. What do you hear from the locals in these border regions and islands? That's a good question. What has your interaction been like with the local people, who presumably have very mixed feelings about everything that's going on?
Most of the locals I met throughout my reporting in Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, honestly, they were like amazing people, just really amazing people that care so much about what was happening in their borders, in their neighborhoods. And one of them even told me, like, I was not going to allow to have people dying in my backyard. Like, that's exactly what was happening. Many of them moved to this region for peace and just to, be away of the city, just to have the nature connection. And then the crisis starts, and then it's all this mess with migrants coming through and people dying in their backyards, as they put it. That it was quite shocking in the beginning of the crisis. The problem started in 2021, but really most of the people I met in these borders were actually the ones taking care of the identifying and finding the bodies and calling the police and calling ambulances when they would hear that there was someone sick in the forest. Or even now, like with this sentiment, anti-migrant, they have received threats for sure of other people, other locals who are like, you are a terrorist because you are bringing food, because you are bringing a first aid to the border to help these criminals. But they still do it, like they still challenge all that to help people. So that for me was just really touching and really empowering in a way, how these people are doing this with no resources. And as I mentioned before, they now are experts. Like, they can really explain so well how this is happening, how the process, and they have connections now with the authorities, and some of the authorities help them, and some don't, but they now have built really a great network that are supporting them. So for me, that interaction, as I mentioned, also like people, locals bring in flowers to the cemeteries, and sometimes they don't even know the name of the person who was there, but they call it, I don't know, like the Syrian, the Ethiopian guy, like they don't know who he was. They don't really want maybe to have more information, but they are there bringing some support. And I think that was that was just really powerful to see in my case.
Alina asks, thank you for your incredibly powerful work. I was wondering if you know of any institutional or political reaction to your investigation. What do you hope may happen about the impact of your work?
Yeah. So yeah, well, our investigation was mentioned in the by the Human Rights Commissioner of the Council of Europe, and so that was kind of great to hear that they are reading our investigation this political national level. And that was something I can mention, but also in my case, my investigation in Lithuania was also brought to in the parliament, mentioned in the Lithuanian parliament. Not really great comments, not really trying to think that, oh, this is what can we do about this, but look, just like more like this scandalous article about the borders in Lithuania. So I think really still the European authorities don't want to take responsibility for what is happening at the borders. And yeah, unfortunately, not much has changed, but I also have hope. For example, in the case I cover in Lithuania, this man who died from Sri Lanka, he died in the Lithuanian border, and he was pushed back. So after a pushback in the middle of the night, and then now this wife, the widow, is suing the government. So she has sued the Lithuanian government, and this case was closed 7 times in Lithuanian courts. But now, after the publication of our article, the local community so in the article we put the link to donate, because they were trying to crowdfund money to be able to bring this case to the European Court of Human Rights. And after the publication of this article, people started to donate. So like really the local activists were like, Gabi, oh my gosh, like people are really donating for this cause. And now we are bringing this to the European Court of Human Rights. So now this case is an open case at the European Court of Human Rights. And I think it will be probably a long battle. It will take time. But, like I hope that this woman will get justice, and if this is if this is just one thing that we can do, and if this is a story that can change something for this woman, I hope that our investigation will have that impact. And yeah, I think a lot of more interest from other journalists in covering this issue now after this investigation. So this has been also really, really great, because we hope to really bring more attention to this topic. Yeah.
And what next for the Border Graves investigation? Will you be continuing it? Will there be any further research conducted, or is that the end of it?
No, well, this is an ongoing discussion with the team. We are now trying to find funds to be able to make a documentary. We made a lot of footage during our investigation, and it would be a pity if we don't publish that footage, because I can see how also documentaries can reach so many different audiences, and we would really love to have this investigation on a documentary feature. So that's something I can share that we have been discussing, and other members in our team have also kept reporting on the topic, and in Spain and in all of the countries actually. We are all really invested into this topic. So I don't think it's going to be the end. I think we are going to continue. Still trying to figure out how is it going to be, but we are for sure continuing. Yes.
I hope you can. And we have a final comment from Dinara, which I think rounds this off very nicely. She says, "Thank you for your answers, Gabriela and Daphne. It gives us some hope that migrants and refugees can be humanized and advocated for, even in death. You're doing incredible work." And I would certainly agree with that. So congratulations for everything you've done. Fantastic work. We hope to see more of this. And we thank you very much for your time today. It looks like Daphne's connection has fallen out, but we'll pass on our thanks to her as well, and the rest of the team. So thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us for IJ4EU Confidential. We'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.